Hey you guys, good to have you with us. Welcome to the show. In studio with me today is Richard Tillinghast, and he's a local musician here in the Gorge, and going to talk to us a bit about his acoustic instruments and his music and his philosophy on man and nature and some interesting stuff. So definitely going to want to stick with us, and in the third segment he'll play us some music. So let's get going, Rich. It's great to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so you play acoustic. You prefer that over electric.
Right. Yep. From the very beginning, it's always been acoustic stuff. Something about plugging in an electric guitar just seems unnatural. It never really sounded. I mean, Jimi Hendrix is my favorite, but I can't do that. It seems like. But yeah, there's something real. It's authentic. It's the real thing, an acoustic sound.
Nothing's amplified or whatever. You're hearing what you're producing.
Right.
Yeah.
And you can play in your house, in your room. When you play it in public, you do have to amplify for large concerts or whatnot. But you hear it. It's real. There's something very real about it.
Have you always played instruments, or at a certain age did something spark your interest, or how did you get into it?
Well, my brother plays guitar, and he showed me some chords when I was probably about 13 years old. And my family is full of writers and artists and sculptors. Everybody's an artist in our family.
Cool.
My dad's a poet and an English teacher. My uncle's a poet. My brother's a sculptor, builds sculptures out of the earth, basically. And
nice.
So he showed me a few chords early on, and then I just started writing. And I really never considered myself to be a great musician whatsoever. I mean, I'm by no means a musician. I consider myself more of a creative person, you could say. And what I was getting at is that I sat there like everybody and tried to figure out some of my favorite songs, how they were making these sounds. But I realized that that was a lot of hard work to sit there and like play the tape over and over. Well, how was he doing that? So I found it much easier just to write my own songs. So I started writing things.
Cool. Well, now tell me about this real genuine interest you have in the psychology of nature and how that interacts with man and how the two coexist and what got you into that.
Right. Well, as a lot of people feel, I feel like we're pretty disconnected from our natural environment right now, our culture. And even to use the word environment is strange, because it's not really our environment, it's our home, it's where we live. So to be disconnected from that pretty much disconnects a person from who he or she really is. And I've been studying a lot about psychology lately, and I was studying René Descartes, the French philosopher from the 15th century, and sort of comparing to his thoughts to the Buddha, basically the originator of Buddhism from the 5th century in India. So Descartes' famous saying was "Cogito ergo sum," which means "I think, therefore I am." And by saying that, he basically realized through his deep thinking that he couldn't be sure that anything existed that he was just perceiving through his perceptions, like this table, the guitar, even you. I mean, I can't really be sure you exist. But his thought was that all that really he could be irrefutably sure of was himself, his own consciousness. So I think, therefore I am. And in a way, he set the self, like the individual self, then as the focus of existence. Like, I think, therefore I am. And he also created some separatism in there, which basically mind-body dualism grew out of. He separated an individual, like here's an individual self, and if you exist, you're an individual self, and somebody else is individual. We all become individuals then. And that obviously sort of separates us from the whole gamut of reality. And the Buddha, for example, he sort of, it was very similar. Descartes and Buddha had very similar ideas.
Okay.
Except for, and I'm no expert by any means. I mean, don't get me wrong here, but from what I can understand is Buddha was thinking more about that, the self did exist, all things exist, but it didn't necessarily need to be such a focal point of like a starting point of existence. More just an existence. Sure, maybe an individual self exists, but it's part of this whole flow of things. And you know, in Western thinking, if we focus so much on ourselves, on an individual or individual ownership, individual property rights, everything from capitalism to our political system to our commerce, everything sort of springs from that, from an individual point of view. And I really feel that getting in touch with the complete flow of everything, everything is interconnected, it would really behoove us, make us all much more happy, much more content people, basically.
So what was it that actually sort of, this realization, if you will, when did this happen for you? Was there a particular circumstance, or is this something that's always sort of been in your you've been aware of, but you've never really devoted a lot of thinking and processing of?
Well, my dad and my mother took us camping at the time. We canoed. We grew up in the woods a lot. We were out a lot, so that exposed me to that. And then I would have to say that going to Nepal about 10 years ago, I had a nice big trip there where I was just a few months really, but my whole goal was to get as far away from any form of civilization or progress, you could say, to sort of see what it was like way up in the mountains in the Himalaya, wherever, you know. So I don't really think I really thought that when I was going, but that's what ended up happening. I just ended up keeping on walking and getting further and further away. And it's such a wonderful country, and you know, it's palpable. You feel it when you land. The people are so happy, and the further I got away, it felt like the people were. This is subjectively speaking, of course, but they were happier. The most happy people I've ever come in contact with were the most removed people from what we would call civilization.
So do you think that you almost, you know, the further that you got away from civilization, almost the more connected as an individual you felt?
That's a great way to put it. The further away I went, the more connected I felt. And I was obviously having a great time myself, so maybe I'm seeing this through lenses, but I don't really think so, because that's a great way to put it. The further away I went, the more connected I felt. The people felt more connected. They just, you know, I remember this shepherdess that I spent some time with up in the mountains. She was one older lady, probably about 60, 70 years old. She was in charge of, honestly, I can't remember what it was she was herding at this point, sheeps or yak, one or the other. So anyway, she just was, she created her own world. She lived up there. She just was the most peaceful person I've ever been around in my life. And this all echoes. So then I went to South America not too long ago, and I spent as much time as possible getting into the jungle. I mean, getting as deep as I could into the jungle. And the same thing happened. I mean, I can tell you some more details, but these were, the further in I got, the more content, the more slow, the more peaceful the people and all of life felt.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, I want to ask you more about that. We got to take a quick break here, but when we come back, I want to learn a little bit more about your perception of all of that. It's very interesting stuff. So you guys stick around. We'll be back with more of Richard Tillinghast right here on Localite.